Welcome to the Voice of Job Seekers. This is Mark, and thank you very much for listening. Hopefully you'll get something out of this show. This is my last show of the season, and if you want to join in or start a conversation, you can do three things. You can leave a voicemail at 708-365-9822. That's easy. You can also text your comments to the same number. You can also go to thevoiceofjobseekers.com and press the send voicemail button on the right side of your screen and leave a message regarding today or any episode for the season. And also you can send a email feedback to me at mark@thevoiceofjobseekers.com. And I want to be sure that you knew that this, and to remind you guys who you're coming for the first time, this is the last episode of the season. I usually take a little hiatus in June. It'll go all the way up until the second week of September, where I'll have new shows, new guests, and I'm going to do something a little different this coming year. And I was hoping to announce it this week, but unfortunately, there's some things that still need to be put together. But you hear an announcement. In fact, what I am going to do is something a little bit different. Instead of completely disengaging from any audio content at all, I am going to give you video content, as I talked about in the past few weeks. There had been some attention to my YouTube channel, and actually I'm getting more traction there lately than I ever had. And there's some shows getting a lot more than others, but that's neither here or there. I want to provide some video content. So you might see me by myself, and it's possible that you might see a guest or two with me on the video channel, the YouTube. That will be in the show notes, and I'll be sure to put that there. Also, you'll see, if you follow the blog itself and you like the articles, there'll be more articles, and I'll keep doing that during the whole summer. That will probably never stop. I think I do take a little month in December of not writing, or at least not publishing, but I think I'm always writing. Always publishing, and probably will be from here on in, because I love that part of the process. In fact, I might like that a little bit more than the podcasting process, but I really do still like podcasts. This is the end of the 6th year. We'll be embarking on the 7th year, starting in September. And we're talking about 205 shows we've done, which is a lot of shows, and it takes a lot of time. And probably if I kept going through, I would have well over 350 shows if I was to do it every week, or even sometimes even twice a week, like I did at one point. Don't want to do that anymore. That's a little bit beyond my means of bandwidth. But I do want you guys to enjoy the content, find it helpful and useful for your job search, for your career change, or implement some of the principles in your workplace and career. So again, hopefully you'll be able to enjoy this conversation, as I want to leave a few thoughts about underemployment. And the reason why I thought about underemployment is that there's been so much talk about unemployment and how low it is. It's below 4% at this particular point. But I will include the April report from the Bureau of Labor and Statistics for you, if you want to take a glance at it and maybe get something from it. There might be some ideas as to what you want to do in the future. But let's talk about underemployment for a little bit. And the reason that I like talking about underemployment, because that's where a lot of people are, even if they're not willing to admit that they're underemployed. Now, there are varying descriptions of what underemployment is, and basically is that people feel like they can be doing better in another employment situation. And, pretty much it's what we decide is underemployment. Nobody else can tell us whether we're underemployed unless we're in a situation where it's obvious that maybe we have a certain type of degree, but we're doing something where it's not meeting our potential, and that's where we feel underemployed, or where somebody else is feeling that way. But of course, you shouldn't always subscribe to whatever other people feel. In fact, the only person that it really matters is to you. And maybe the second part might be your family, but sometimes you've got to move with what is critical to you as far as your potential. Now, there are some parts of this that we can kind of break down a little bit. I'm not going to break it all down, but there's several considerations we should make in making this discussion about underemployment somewhat useful. One is that underemployment often are people who are part-time who can't find full-time jobs in their field. And that's part of the BLS report that's issued every month, that there are people who they can't find full-time jobs in their field, or who can't find full-time jobs. Secondly, there's the people who voluntarily work part-time because they're in between career decisions. And sometimes that's not a bad thing. If you've had a hectic career, or a management career even, and the stress is just way out of control, but you're not ready to take on a full-time job yet, and you might have the means to take on a part-time job. You want to do something, but you don't want to completely immerse yourself in. That's a part of it. As well as there's a lot of mothers who take time off. They have newborns, and they want to go into something that's volunteer or part-time because they need to be or want to be home with their child. That's important. We can't forget those women, probably a smaller subsection than ever, that would just rather be home full-time with their children. And there's still, despite what people may say, there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. And many times that's critical to a family to have that. And that one person is, and these days, I forget, it could be a father that decides to take on that role and not the mother. And mother is the one who is working full-time and has that ability to support the family. I know several like that, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And sometimes that's worked out to the family to be the best situation. There are people who are voluntarily part-time because there's the decision to work 2 or 3 jobs because they're involved, whether they recognize it's the gig economy or not, but the gig economy are full of people who are working for several companies, and they're part-time situations, but because their jobs are very flexible, it's a pretty seamless transition and lifestyle to live. There's even smaller people who love to travel and who will work from anywhere in the world. In fact, it is very possible, and I've talked about on the show here, that you can work a full-time job from anywhere. Your employer's in Paris, but you live in San Francisco, and you work for that company that allows you to work remote, and you never have to see them. And there are people in tech who do that all the time. So there's many different scenarios where people may count that as underemployment, but that's not something the Bureau of Labor Statistics count. They don't count underemployment. They just gave the one statistic that perhaps they're part-time workers who can't find full-time jobs in their field. Now, about the people who work gigs, part-time gigs, it's hard to say whether they're counted. More than likely, they count themselves better off in a better situation because they get to work gigs that allows them a very flexible schedule. They can go anywhere in the world. They can take a vacation anytime they want. And it's a lot of hard work when you have three employers that you're working for. So keep that in mind as we begin to unfold unemployment a little bit. There was a pay scale study, a survey a couple of years back in 2016, I believe, if not 2017, where 40% of respondents said that they believed that they were underemployed. Again, talking about something that you believe that you are. Of the respondents, 76% said that they were underemployed because they were not using their education or training. While the Bureau of Labor Statistics does not measure underemployment, as we talked about, because the difficulty of developing an objective set of criteria, it is safe to say underemployment is a severe social change or a social challenge that makes it a little bit difficult in our overall economy. But I don't think the overall economy at this particular point is affected as much as you would of how the economy overall is being presented. And people look at different factors and all, and we'll hear the differences, and we're not here to unfold that. But all that to say that underemployment, someone decides that they can give more, do more, and be more, and they have that feeling that underemployment is where they're at, and it stinks. I would even argue that it's a dark place to feel like you're being underutilized, or that you're being, that you're not contributing or not using your talents. Arguable, indeed. But if you don't want to be underemployed, here are some tips that we can perhaps talk about and use. So let's unwrap a little bit about how unemployment, or underemployment as we're talking about here, how some tips to handle it this summer. Summer is that time where it may suck, where your finances are definitely limited, and you may feel like you could do better. But here are some mindset aspects that you need to consider while you're underemployed. And again, this is how to handle it. And some of this is from my personal experience of being underemployed at different times in my life. And there's some things that I've had clients do, that I've taught, that I've trained on, and maybe this will be helpful. First, fight the urge to be complacent or even settle if the opportunity is a lousy job, particularly if it's a lousy full-time job. And you kind of know whether it is or not. You're thinking more monetarily than you are about being fulfilled. And you will settle into a full-time job where you're not wanted, and that is not serving a purpose. Now, I'm not to say that you take a full-time job and continue looking for another opportunity. That's possible. There's a leeway to it. There are times when you take jobs that take up all of your brain space and you don't have any brain space left for outside of work. That could be a hazardous situation. But definitely don't become complacent with it. It's not something you have to have forever. It's something that you can actually move from. You just have to be a little strategic. Being full-time in a job that you don't want, and if you're complacent, you're going to eventually feel that anxiousness and that angst. You're going to feel the burden, and even more so, you're going to feel it in your pocket if you become complacent. And that is worse than unemployment, because you feel like you're trapped. And if you have a family, you don't want to let down the family. You don't want to let down your spouse. That's something where you got to consider. that's the part of the ramifications of becoming complacent. So don't become complacent, or don't settle if the opportunity is too lousy. Plan to move on from it, but I understand that there needs to be a bridge opportunity, which many people do. Secondly is to understand that personal trials take up space, and you can ignore the impact of that. We hope problems go away, and we hope professional problems go away. And sometimes there are times when you're going to need to confront that in order for you to have more space so you can move on in that situation. Personal trials at a lousy job is even worse, because we want to handle it in a way that we can, bully some space, and really that kind of stinks when you do that. You don't want to be in a situation where you hurt someone knowing, hey, you are going to move on anyway, so it really doesn't matter, and it doesn't always work that way, unfortunately. So you want to be ready to understand the impact of handling the situation, but you also want to be fully present for it as well. There's no doubt that those things could be a distraction to what your ultimate goal is to find the job that you desire in the situation you desire. So again, first is don't become complacent or settle, and don't ignore the challenges that come along with being underemployed, because you've got to deal with them. Thirdly is to embrace rejection. And rejection is not a verdict. And sometimes no is really not yet. You got to be ready, because rejection, when it happens, and it may not happen often, but the impact of it could take you off your game. It could take you off your goals. And again, if you're finding the work that you desire, that you want, you're going to have to be ready for rejection. Now, I'm not saying you should always expect rejection, but in a lot of ways, it's going to happen. You don't know how it's going to happen. There have been job seekers who actually get jobs, and the job actually peters out because of one reason or another. Sometimes because a company suddenly closes, or the department closes, or they decide to go in a different direction, even if they've chosen you. That kind of sucks. And that can also make you feel trapped. But it shouldn't be the final verdict for your life. You should be ready for rejection and embrace that as part of the process, because that's where you're going to learn. In what I do, in situations, I welcome the rejection and I welcome the no's, because at least I know exactly where I stand, so I can move on a little bit quicker. But definitely, it's easier to break off from a rejection than not knowing if it's a yes or a no. So number 4 is to learn to develop professional assets to put in your pocket. During this time while you're underemployed, consider that if you have more time, it might be time to volunteer. Volunteer, as we've talked about before, is a great way to get some experience, but also be able to use that time to develop additional skills and put them to the test. Now, it's not hard to find organizations that will take you on to help you develop skills. If you learn something new, the best way to develop it is to put it in practice right away. Volunteering puts you in a situation, or potentially puts you in a situation, where if you're strategic about it and if you can pick the areas where you want to volunteer and what you want to do, the impact of mistakes are a lot lower than, if you're in an actual job. And employers can also see that you are working at it. Now, we can argue whether should you position it as experience or job experience or not. Experience is experience. So that's something for you to feel out and for you to, but you definitely want to market that as part of your experience in the growth professionally. And that's probably one of the most important parts of being able to volunteer, is be able to make that applicable knowledge and make that a part of your skill set. So first point was to fight complacency and not to settle. Second is to confront and deal with personal trials. Thirdly is to embrace rejection. Understand that doesn't dictate what will happen to you in the future. Fourth is to develop professionally and be an asset to others. And fifth is it's better to prepare for a longer journey than a short one. Now, that's not having a negative mindset. That's just being prepared for enduring storms in your life. It's good to know that during the trials and some of the things that you're still trying to figure out is all part of the journey, but it's better that you're prepared as if you prepared for a hurricane or a tornado. Sometimes the power outages may last for days. You can't will your way into a shorter time where in situations you can't control. But you can will your way into your preparation. And all this is about preparation. So having said that, I want to kind of end it there. And I'm just hoping that you'll have a great summer, that you'll decide that this will be a great summer for you. And should you have any questions, you can always contact me. I hope you consider also, if you haven't already, this is the last month I think I'm going to have up the 219 Modern Job Search Tips for 2019 as a free guide. It's going to go away. Last year I kept it up for the whole year. I don't think I'm going to do that this year, because this summer I'm going to be working on a project where I'm going to offer something different. You should look for that. If you haven't subscribed to the blog, you can use Feedly.com to subscribe to all your blogs in one place, and that way you can always get the updates there. I'll continue to print articles. Follow me on social media as well. The social icons are right there on the site. So I look forward to talking with you. Feel free to contact me during the summer. You have a great summer. And also look for my YouTube videos as well. So I'm not going to be completely in the cut. In the meantime, thanks very much. I'll look forward to seeing you show-wise next September. And also subscribe to the newsletter as well. Please do that. I'll talk to you soon. Have a great summer.